Welcome to another episode of Eric Waite Whiskey Studies, and we're continuing our study of the business of Scotch whiskey. In this video, we're going to be looking at the current developments in the Scotch whiskey industry. We are living in a really exciting time period. A lot of new distilleries are opening up. The Scotch whiskey industry is really booming, but it also makes it challenging to cover as a topic because there is always something new popping up. And as soon as this video is posted, something else could pop up that don't really know about yet. So this isn't going to be comprehensive, but about everything, and everything's happening so quickly. But it's really exciting just to see what's currently going on. While I'm going over my notes, I'm going to be enjoying a dram of the most current ARDBEG committee release. This is the ARDBEG drum. A really interesting whiskey, sort of controversial. I've already reviewed it, as well as some of my colleagues and fellow whiskey tubers, and the reviews have been sort of all over the place. Some people really like it, some are kind of eh. It definitely is a whiskey that needs to open up, so you got to get it below the shoulder to, I think, really appreciate it. However, I did like it from the neck pour, and if you want my full review, you can check it out up there. Since the new millennium started, we have seen a virtual explosion of new distilleries opening up in Scotland. No less than 30 new malt distilleries, not counting reopenings, like for instance Glenglassaugh and Bladnoch, have started production. We need to go back to the late 1800s for something similar, when 40 new distilleries were founded between 1890 and 1900. On the 4th of September 2018, the Scottish Parliament celebrated the fact that there are now 128 distillers operating across Scotland's 5 different whiskey regions, the most since 1945. Still, it will not stop here. A number of projects are in different stages of being completed, while more distilleries are currently in the planning phase. Not only is it new distilleries being opened, October 2017 was Distillery Resurrection Month. Diageo announced it would reopen the cult distilleries of Brora in the Highlands and Port Ellen on Islay. Both were closed down in 1983 because they were surplus to requirements. Since then, their whiskeys have become amongst the most sought after in the world. One day after Diageo's announcement was the news that Rosebank would be brought back to life. The Falkirk Distillery, which was shuttered in 1993, will restart operations again in 2019 or 2020, thanks to an investment of up to £12 million by Ian MacLeod Distillers. So, first of all, really, really nice whiskey. If you can still get your hands on it, and because it had some early negative or questionable press, I think a lot of people weren't as in a big rush to get a bottle of this, but if you can get one, I would highly recommend it. I paid about $150 for these. I actually picked up 6 in total, 2 to keep for myself, 1 to drink or open right away, and the others I distributed to some of my fellow whiskey tubers. One of the interesting things when I was recently in Scotland, July 2019, was to sort of get an eye on some of the things that are currently in process. One of the new distilleries that were resurrected distilleries was Annandale in the Lowlands, which I visited Roy, or Aquavitae, and it was really neat to see that justice is being done to the history of the location. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of those distilleries closed, if you watched my series on the history of Scotch whiskey, you'll know this, is that a lot of, particularly in the Lowlands, a lot of distilleries were focused on mass production, and so it was quantity over quality. There have been some people who've been really concerned about the current boom, say, hey, you know, we're going to end up with another Whiskey Lake, Whiskey Lock, and so we're going to have another glut in the market. So all of this new production, you know, is just setting up for another failure. However, the fact that these distilleries are focusing very differently and are developing their business model very differently, in that they are looking to become artisan, craft, distilleries. I know those are buzzwords in the industry, but really focus on quality over quantity, not just trying to push out a lot of juice for mass consumption, is going to be what really makes a difference in this go-around. First, Diageo's Roseau Distillery, situated next to Diageo's Maltings at Roseau. Roseau was the first new distillery to be built by Diageo in over 30 years. Roseau has the capacity to produce 10.2 million liters of pure alcohol per year, and this has risen to 12.5 million liters per year. Second, small single estate distillery of Ballindallack, which produces only 100,000 liters per year. There they grow their own barley on the estate and even feed the draft to their Aberdeen Angus cattle while using other byproducts to fertilize their soil. Third, Dalmunnock is the newest, having been built on the site of the former Imperial Distillery. There have been some very interesting new distilleries being built right across the Highland region, including remote peninsulas and islands, from the tiny micro distillery of Avonjarrick. And if you want to hear someone pronounce this correctly, here is Roy.
Avonjarrick. Avonjarrick is a tiny little distillery on the island of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. Avon is river and Jarrick is red, so Red River Distillery. The tough one here is Jarrick because there's a hidden syllable between the R and the G at the end, or the R and the K side. So you don't just say Jark, it's Jarrick. Avonjarrick.
And the other is the Ardnamurchan Distillery on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. Interestingly, many of these new Highland distilleries are selling gin or vodka while they wait for their whiskey to mature. Namely, Harris and Strathearn make gin, and ARDBEG both vodka and gin. Let's take a little sip. There's a tropical note. It's finished in rum, but I kind of get a coconut character to it. Loads of vanilla. Of course, the smoke and the peat is interwoven in there. I get like pineapple, banana, loads of vanilla. It's quite sweet. Now, of course, I'm drinking this on ice because it's a really, really hot day. We've been hitting in the high 90s here. And it takes on an interesting character when you cool it down. In fact, it almost starts to feel like more of a tropical cocktail with a little bit of peatiness in it. But I like it. So anyhow, let's move on. There are several new distilleries planned for the Highlands and Islands, all at various stages of development. Some have already started construction, while others are still looking to raise capital. It is interesting to note that several new distilleries have been or are planned to be built on islands. Many of these are bringing back the tradition of distilling to these remote island locations, with Skye, Barra, Raasay, and Shetland all soon to have a new distillery. The remoteness will surely add complications to the construction process. But also, for me as a whiskey adventurer, new destinations to travel and explore. Just a few years ago, there were only a handful of distilleries in operation in the lowlands, namely Glenkinchie, Auchentoshan, and Bladnoch. However, in the last 2 years, a whole host of distilleries have sprung into action. Fife, which was once a hub for distilling, is now seeing somewhat of a renaissance. The tiny Daft Mill distillery in Fife now has whiskey that is over 10 years old, and at the other end of the spectrum, the newly opened INCHIDAIRNIE distillery is not a micro distillery, but will be producing 2 million liters per year. According to the website, we will not see any INCHIDAIRNIE single malt whiskey for sale until at least 2029. There are also plans for several new distilleries in the lowlands, with many planned for the borders. Many of these distilleries are at early stages of planning. Edinburgh has emerged as a hotspot for new distilleries, with no less than 3 due to open in the next couple of years. Holyrood Distillery, Port of Leith Distillery, and Crabbe's Distillery. Once home to over 20 distilleries, Campbelltown has only seen one new distillery open since 2000, Glengyle, which was originally opened in 1872 and closed in 1925. It is owned by the owners of Springbank, and currently there are no other distilleries planned for the Campbelltown area. Now, I was in Campbelltown in July 2019, and there were at one time, over 20 distilleries, and there are now these sort of ghost distilleries. The historical locations are known, and so you can go to Campbelltown, visit obviously the 3 operational distilleries, but also do a tour, and that you can get a map and go see some of the other locations of the defunct distilleries. It'll be interesting to see in this new wave if someone decides that was once what was once the city of Scotch whiskey, the city of whiskey, perhaps will invest and bring in new distilleries because the town could really use it. It would really be economically beneficial, and in terms of ports and access for shipping the whiskeys, it really is an ideal location. But we'll see how it goes. Islay. Kilchoman was the first distillery to be built on the island in over 120 years in 2005, with Ardnamurchan becoming the 9th distillery to open on Islay in the autumn of 2018. We're now waiting for at least another 2. French distiller and owner Jean Donnet has had her plans beset with problems, but after resolving the land dispute with Hunter Lang, work on building the distillery may resume. Sukhinder Singh, owner of Elixir Distillers and the Whisky Exchange in London, is also planning to build a distillery outside of Port Ellen, although no application at the time of this recording has been submitted to the council. Alrighty, so that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of what's currently going on and the current trends in the Scotch whiskey industry. If you ever watch the live streams for the Scotch for Dummies, they like to do news things. So if something new pops up in the Scotch whiskey industry, they will probably announce it during their live streams. Also, Jason, the Mash and Drum, he also in his live streams on Wednesdays, he likes to give news articles or news stories of latest things happening in the whiskey industry. Alrighty, that's it for this video. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you haven't yet subscribed but you like watching my videos, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe and give this video a thumbs up and share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking channels. Until next time, cheers. Hey, if you like my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.